Hey guys, tonight we're going on a moonlit journey back to the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, into the winding alleys, flickering torches, and sacred mysteries of the city of Ur. The Euphrates River flows nearby, carrying reed boats and dreams. Date palms rustle in the gentle night breeze. Somewhere off in the fields, a farmer's ox grunts in its sleep. Clay brick houses rest like giant loaves, warm from the sun's memory. And you're about to break a dozen sacred laws just by walking where you're walking. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sky above Ur is velvet blue, and the great ziggurat looms ahead, its steps sharp against the starlight, rising like a stairway carved from sand and time itself. You pull your cloak tighter against the breeze. Around you, the night city exhales. A pot lid clinks somewhere behind a courtyard wall. The scent of roasted barley drifts in the air. A dog yawns in the shadows and goes back to dreaming of bones. You walk slowly past rows of sun-dried houses. Their walls are made of mud brick, layered and smeared with straw. Everything feels ancient and humming with memory. Even the dust under your sandals seems to know something it won't tell you. A priest in dark robes slips past you, not speaking, eyes fixed ahead. He carries a shallow copper bowl of burning incense, frankincense, or maybe cedar resin, leaving a soft trail of smoke. You try not to sneeze. There's something about this hour, this moment before the priests lock the gates, when the moon hangs low and thick like a piece of polished alabaster. It lights up the top of the ziggurat like a crown, while its base drowns in shadow. You pass a sleeping goat tied to a post. Its ears twitch. You resist the urge to pet it. This city, Ur, isn't just old. It's one of the oldest cities on Earth. Over 4,000 years ago, it buzzed with scribes and merchants and temple workers. This was their world, a place where gods walked in dreams, and the moon was more than just a rock in the sky. You step over a shallow gutter carved into the road and glance up. The ziggurat still waits. Historians still argue whether ziggurats were strictly temples, or whether they served as astronomical towers, sacred homes for the gods, or just oversized status symbols for kings with too much clay. Tonight, it feels like all of them. You approach the base. The lower terrace is wide and cool in the moonlight. Torches flicker along its outer wall, wedged into bronze brackets shaped like stylized lions. You stand silently as a group of women in pale linen robes walk past you, barefoot, humming a low and rhythmic chant. One of them holds a small, sleeping child in her arms. You think you recognize the lullaby, maybe something you've heard before in a museum audio guide or in a dream. A stone tablet stands to the right of the main stairwell, covered in deeply carved cuneiform. You run your fingers along the grooves. The script is precise, wedge-shaped, and deliberate. You can't read a word of it, but it feels important. Probably something like, "Keep off the grass," or more likely, "Only the high priest enters here." Oops. The moon shifts slightly, casting a long triangle of light up the stairway. You take a deep breath. The steps are steep and narrow, built not just to elevate the gods, but maybe to humble the climbers. Each one is worn in the center, smoothed by centuries of bare feet and nervous sandals. You begin your climb. The bricks beneath your feet are still warm from the day's sun. As you ascend, you pass small altars tucked into recesses, tiny shrines with fruit offerings, clay figurines, and feathers. A lizard skitters across one, not caring in the slightest that it just desecrated a sacred banana. Higher now, the air grows thinner, cooler. A breeze touches your neck like a whisper. To your left, the great city stretches out, a tapestry of square rooftops and narrow alleys, oil lamps flickering in some of the windows like sleeping eyes. You spot a group of children on a distant rooftop playing a silent game of chase. They dart like shadows, then vanish. You pause to catch your breath on a landing halfway up. There's a stone bench, more like a slab, really, and you sit, wiping your brow. Someone carved a spiral into the surface long ago. You trace it absently, wondering if it meant infinity or don't sit here. Either way, it's yours now. A temple worker, younger than you expected, steps out from a doorway to your right. He carries a jug of water and a tray with dried figs. He nods at you, offers you one. You take it, soft, sweet, surprisingly juicy. He doesn't speak, just smiles and disappears back inside. You resume your climb. The moonlight now spills directly onto the upper platform. The final stretch awaits. And just as you place your foot on the last step, something shifts, almost imperceptibly. The hum in your ears deepens. The breeze pauses. The smell of smoke and dust thickens. You step up into it, feeling like you've entered a different layer of time. The noises of the city fall away. You've made it to the top. From here, the Ziggurat no longer feels like a building. It feels like a ship in the sky, floating above Mesopotamia, tethered only by memory. You walk forward, slowly, toward the temple's entrance. You pause just outside the temple threshold, the edge where the cool air of the upper courtyard meets the warm, incense-saturated breath of the sacred interior. The doorway is narrow but tall, framed in limestone blocks, smoothed by time and reverence. Shadows play along the carvings, stylized bulls, crescent moons, spiraling lines that might mean stars or wind or something older than language. You step inside. It's darker than you expected. Not black, but dappled, like stepping into a forest where only slivers of moonlight cut through the branches. A few bronze braziers glow softly on the floor, giving the air a flickering gold quality. The scent is immediate. Thick swirls of frankincense and myrrh and something smoky that makes your eyes water slightly. Maybe cedar bark. Maybe dried pomegranate husks. Maybe just the ghosts of too many prayers. You're not alone. Figures move quietly in the haze. Priests, robed in earth-colored linen, walk barefoot over reed mats. Their heads are shaved, their hands held close to their chests. Some carry offerings, bowls of dates, small vessels of oil, bundles of dried reeds tied with gold cord. You watch one priest kneel at a low altar, then slowly place a single lotus flower in a shallow dish. It's unclear if this is a religious rite or just a really gentle way to say goodnight to the gods. You keep walking, slowly. No one stops you. No one asks your name. A bell tinkles softly in the distance, small, high-pitched, almost playful. Somewhere deeper in the temple, someone chants a phrase that repeats every few seconds, like a spiritual lullaby or the start of an ancient Mesopotamian guided meditation. You glance up. The ceiling arches overhead like the underside of a boat, curved and ribbed, with old smoke stains seeping through the plaster. It gives the strange sense that the temple is both grounded and adrift, like it might lift off the ziggurat entirely if the moon tugs hard enough. There are statues along the walls, each resting in small alcoves, one of a lion with wings and a human face, another of a man holding a double-headed axe and smiling like he knows something embarrassing about you. They watch silently as you pass, heavy-lidded and patient. Then the room opens into a wider chamber. Here, the ceiling rises higher, and the air grows warmer, more fragrant. An enormous copper basin sits in the center, filled with some kind of sacred oil that reflects the torchlight like liquid bronze. A priestess stirs it slowly with a wooden staff, whispering words you don't understand. Maybe Sumerian, maybe nonsense. Honestly, it could just be the temple's dinner recipe, but she says it like she's translating thunder into honey. Historians still argue whether the rituals inside ziggurats were performed by large groups or restricted to elite clergy. Some believe the public never saw these inner sanctums at all. Yet here you are, the most underdressed interloper in sacred real estate. To your left, a small alcove catches your eye. There's a long, low table carved from dark stone, and atop it are rows of small ceramic bowls, each filled with something different: lentils, barley grains, dried figs, a few scattered coins. One bowl even holds a perfectly folded piece of linen. Offerings, perhaps, or forgotten temple laundry. You hear footsteps behind you. Turning slightly, you see an older priest approaching, face deeply lined, head bowed slightly in greeting. His robe is ash gray and embroidered with tiny white triangles around the collar, like teeth or stars. He gestures for you to follow. You do, because when a man that serene makes a request without speaking, your only real option is to nod respectfully and hope this doesn't end with your name being offered to the moon god in a fire bowl. He leads you past the copper basin, down a short corridor that smells of old parchment and burned honey. You're not sure how those two things mix, but they do. The passage narrows again before opening into a much smaller room, this one circular, domed, and almost entirely silent. In the center of the room sits a bowl of fire no larger than a helmet. It crackles quietly, its flames colored blue at the base. Around it, 5 priests sit cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing in sync. The older priest gestures again, inviting you to sit. You lower yourself onto the mat. The stone floor is warm, as though the ziggurat itself still holds the day's sunlight like a secret. A priest to your right opens his eyes and offers you a small cube of something golden and sticky. You accept it, honey-soaked barley cake. Surprisingly chewy. Then you feel it. A hum. Not from the fire, or the people, or the temple itself, but from something deeper. Like the foundation stones below are singing. It's subtle, maybe imagined, but you'd swear the floor has its own heartbeat. Someone behind you begins to play a soft, low tune on a reed flute. It's not a melody in the traditional sense, more like a drift of wind that happens to have notes in it. You close your eyes for a moment. When you open them again, the room looks different. The fire bowl seems brighter. The flames leap higher. One of the priests has started to chant in a voice that sounds older than he is. You catch fragments of names: Urnamu and Heduana, Shulgi, like echoes from school textbooks or half-remembered museum placards. You lean back slightly, staring up at the dome overhead. It's painted with an image of the moon, a perfect circle ringed with stars. At its center is a single, large eye. You blink. It doesn't. You don't move. Just breathe. The scent of burnt offerings, flickering light, the sound of breath, and barley settling into your bones. And in that moment, in the quiet hum beneath it all, you think, this place isn't dead, it's dreaming. The hum follows you as you leave the domed chamber, trailing at your heels like a kitten made of echoes. You're not sure if the priests are still sitting there, chanting and offering honey cakes to whatever watches from the shadows, or if you imagined the whole thing, maybe both. The corridor narrows again, curling upward in a spiral. You trace your fingers along the wall as you climb. Cool stone, slightly damp, occasionally interrupted by crude carvings. A handprint here, a spiral there, someone's idea of sacred graffiti. Eventually, the passage opens to a rooftop terrace, flat and broad, ringed with a low wall. The moon is higher now, pouring silver over everything like melted pearl. You exhale and feel it. The vastness of the sky, the press of the stars, the sudden awareness that you are very small and very awake in a world that has long since fallen asleep. Below, the city of glows in soft amber and flickering shadow. Oil lamps burn on rooftops. Somewhere, a lyre plays a slow, repeating tune. It sounds like a lullaby sung by a river. You lean against the wall and watch a cloud drift past the moon, its edges glowing like a coal. A figure joins you on the terrace, their footsteps impossibly silent on the stone. They wear a high priest's mantle, dark indigo, embroidered with pale silver threads shaped like reeds, waves, and stars. They don't speak for a long time. Just stand beside you, looking out over the city. Do you hear it? They finally whisper, voice soft and cracked like baked clay. You do. That hum again, distant, low, but present. Like the bones of the ziggurat are singing through the silence. They say the gods live at the top of the mountain, the priest continues. But our mountains are made by hand, so we built this one for them, in case they got tired of the real ones. You nod, unsure what else to do. The air smells of dust and night jasmine. They used to leave offerings here, the priest says, pointing to a small square recess in the rooftop floor. Not just food and wine, stories too. Poems etched in clay, dreams written in symbols. You could bring one if you wanted. You crouch down to peer into the recess. It's about the size of a briefcase. A few bits of cracked pottery rest inside, tiny fragments of tablets, faint lines of cuneiform still clinging to their surfaces like ancient secrets. You wonder who wrote them. A poet? A temple scribe? A very bored teenager? Historians still debate whether the ziggurats were simply temples to the gods, or whether they also acted as archives. Living libraries made of stone and smoke and ceremony. There's no consensus, which means, of course, you're free to make up your own answer. That's how history works after midnight. The priest beside you removes a small item from their sleeve, a cylinder seal, no longer than your thumb, carved with intricate scenes, a line of figures in profile, a lion chasing a gazelle, a god in a horned crown, holding a shepherd's crook. They roll it gently across the ledge, leaving an invisible trail in the dust. They were our signatures, the priest says, our names, our dreams, pressed into the clay like footprints. We were here. You smile faintly, not because it's poetic, though it is, but because it reminds you of something simple and modern, like kids carving initials into wet cement, or drawing hearts on fogged-up car windows. You step away from the ledge and walk slowly along the perimeter. The terrace is surprisingly large, maybe the size of a tennis court if tennis had been invented 3,000 years earlier and played by people in linen skirts. Near the far edge, you find a bench. Not a modern bench, but a low platform of polished stone, cool and clean. You sit. The moon casts your shadow in soft gray beside you. A clay jug sits nearby, half full of water. You take a cautious sip, lukewarm, a little dusty, but refreshing. Then you hear something unexpected. Laughter. Children's laughter. You lean over the edge and look down. In one of the courtyards far below, a group of young temple apprentices are playing a game. They chase one another in circles, tag each other, fall dramatically, then spring up laughing. A priestess watches from a shaded corner, pretending not to smile. You sit back, exhaling. That hum again, still there, like the ziggurat is breathing with you. Maybe it is. There's a small clay tablet beside the bench. You pick it up carefully. It's old, but not ancient. Recently written, still soft enough to leave a mark. There's a reed stylus resting beside it. You hesitate only a second, then press a symbol into the surface. You don't know what it means. You don't even know what language it's in, but it's yours now. You set it back down and close your eyes. A gust of wind brushes past, bringing the scent of fire and figs. When you open your eyes again, the priest is gone. The city is quiet. Even the children have vanished. You look up at the stars and whisper, "Thank you." The ziggurat doesn't reply, but the hum, low and constant, seems to deepen. Not louder, just closer. And for the first time tonight, you realize it's not the ziggurat that's humming. It's you. You leave the rooftop as slowly as you arrived, your footsteps soft against the warm stone stairs. Each step down feels like a release, a gentle descent, not just through levels of the temple, but into layers of your own calm. You're sinking into the ziggurat like warm honey into bread. The hallways twist again, torchlit and still. Somewhere water trickles behind a wall, steady as breath. You pass a doorless archway carved with the symbols of Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and possibly very confusing dreams. Her sigil, the eight-pointed star, repeats over and over, as if reminding you that even divinity needs a logo. Inside the chamber, the mood shifts. It's lower-ceilinged here, intimate, heavy with sandalwood smoke. A row of low stools lines the perimeter, and on each one sits a scribe. Young, old, male, female, it's a chorus of ink-stained elbows and concentrated frowns. Clay tablets cover every surface, some drying in neat rows, others still warm from inscription. The scent of wet earth hangs in the air, grounding and oddly comforting, like a potter's studio or the world's most sophisticated mud pie workshop. This is the writing chamber. You stand at the threshold, hesitant. One of the scribes looks up and gestures you in with a reed stylus, twirling it between their fingers like a baton. You step in. The floor is cool and worn smooth by years of barefoot pacing. Here, people write history not with grand gestures or epic battles, but with small, deliberate impressions. Each symbol pressed into clay is a choice, a moment, a decision to make the past permanent. One scribe leans over a tablet, lips moving as they read aloud the lines they just carved. You catch a fragment, something about counting goats for a temple offering, a thrilling tale of animal-based bureaucracy. One of the older scribes pats the bench beside him, and you sit. He places a fresh tablet in front of you, then holds out a stylus. You hesitate again. History's a lot more interactive than you'd anticipated, but eventually you accept. He dips his head once. "Write something," he murmurs. So you do. You write your name. You think. The characters are crude, possibly backwards. It might say, "your name," instead of your actual one. Still, it counts. You press the stylus into the clay again. You add a symbol that might mean river, or maybe fish, or maybe a frowny face. The scribe watches, not judging, just observing. Like a kind teacher watching a toddler paint the sun green because yellow is too obvious. He leans over and, without asking, adds a mark beside yours. It's neater, more practiced, and probably says something helpful like, "This was written by a traveler with questionable handwriting." You both nod. As the minutes pass, you begin to see what makes this room so special. It's not the words themselves, it's the act of marking time, of pushing the self into wet clay and saying, "I was here." Whether you're chronicling royal decrees or goat tallies, it's still a whisper across centuries. Historians often argue about the origin of writing in Mesopotamia. Was it invented for trade, for religious record keeping, for poetry? Or was it just a clever way to track who borrowed whose shovel? The truth is likely all of it. Writing, like life, is messy and multifunctional. A young girl, a few stools down, giggles as she scratches out a line of symbols and starts over. Her older brother sighs, like this is the 10th tablet she's wasted today. He doesn't stop her, though. You get the feeling people have been sassing their siblings since the 3rd dynasty of Ur. You're given a cup of something warm. It's thick, spiced, maybe barley milk. You're not sure, but it tastes like the inside of a good dream. The scribes pass it around, sharing quiet laughter and muttered corrections. One drops their tablet and yells something that might translate as fluffy dung of the moon calf. Mild drama, scribe style. You linger longer than you should. Eventually, the older scribe collects your tablet and places it carefully on a drying shelf. It leans against dozens of others, each one holding a tiny world. He presses a hand to his chest in farewell. You mirror him. There's no need for words. As you leave the chamber, your fingers still faintly dusted with clay, the hum returns. Not louder, just more present. Like it's no longer coming from around you, but through you. You follow the sound down a side corridor you hadn't noticed before. The walls here are different, lined not with clay or stone, but woven reed panels. They shift slightly in the breeze, rustling like papyrus leaves or ancient whispers trying to get your attention. The corridor opens into a small courtyard, open to the sky, surrounded by stone walls that drink in the moonlight. In the center sits a raised platform of smooth white alabaster. Atop it, a massive, flat circular disc, a map, or maybe a calendar, or maybe the world's oldest dinner plate. It's carved with winding rivers, dots for cities, symbols for stars and gods and crops. A priest stands nearby, adjusting small stone markers on the disc. You approach. He looks up, nods once, then steps aside. Invitation granted. You trace a line on the disc with your finger. It leads from a river delta to a tiny ziggurat symbol, then veers off toward mountains. A journey, a story, a breadcrumb trail left in stone. The priest clears his throat and says, quietly, "This is where the stories start." You look up at him. "And where they return," he adds, as if that clears anything up. He hands you a smooth pebble and gestures at the map. You place it at random, somewhere near the river, somewhere that feels like home. The priest nods. "Well placed," he says, smiling. And with that cryptic blessing, he vanishes into another corridor, leaving you standing beneath the stars, one hand on a stone that holds the oldest story you've ever known. Yours. The reed-hung corridor seems to wait for you as you step away from the map, your hand tingling from the touch of polished stone. You glance over your shoulder, half expecting the priest to return, or for the alabaster disc to shift and reveal some ancient mechanism underneath. It doesn't. It simply rests in the moonlight, unmoving, timeless, content to wait another 1,000 years. The hum, however, grows a little clearer, less vibration, more voice, still low and gentle, like someone humming a lullaby just out of sight. You follow it. The corridor gently slopes downward now, the walls gradually giving way to smooth brick again, patterned with faint zigzags and spirals. Water stains darken the lower edges, and the air becomes damp, cool, earthy. You breathe it in deeply. It smells like clay jars and forgotten rain. A wide archway opens before you. You duck through it, brushing aside a dangling curtain of beads, each strung with small shell fragments, bits of colored glass, and what might be date pits. The curtain makes a gentle clicking sound as you pass, like someone slowly counting. You enter the ziggurat's lowest sanctum. The space feels like the inside of a drum, hollow, cool, still. A small spring gurgles from one corner, feeding a narrow channel that winds lazily through the room, disappearing into a crack in the far wall. Along the edges of the channel, lush moss and low ferns grow where no garden should. The gods clearly ignored the architectural blueprints here. A cluster of clay vessels sits nearby, some with lids, others open to the air. They're filled with fragrant oils, grains, and what looks like dried figs, offerings. None of them seem guarded or roped off. There are no "do not touch" signs in Sumerian, just trust and the heavy hush of sacred expectation. You wander over and pick up a small bowl. It's filled with sesame seeds. Nothing magical, nothing flashy. But it makes your stomach rumble all the same. You put it down before temptation becomes sacrilege. At the center of the chamber stands a platform, not grand, but precise. On it, a single statue, carved from lapis lazuli and alabaster. The figure is androgynous, serene, cloaked in flowing robes that shimmer faintly even in the low light. Their eyes are deep set, inlaid with obsidian. They are not smiling, but neither are they frowning. They are listening. You step closer, and the hum spikes, still soft, but clear now. A voice, maybe female, maybe male, maybe not a voice at all, but a resonance your bones interpret as one. It speaks not in words, but in awareness. Like you've just remembered something you never knew you forgot. A plaque at the statue's base is etched with only one character, Dingir, the divine determinative, the ancient sign for God. Historians often puzzle over how Mesopotamians perceived their deities. Were they literal beings, archetypes, theories with sandals? The answer seems to be yes, and also maybe, and also please don't ask unless you've brought wine. You kneel instinctively, not out of fear or reverence, but in the way one might kneel beside a sleeping animal, cautious, respectful, curious. The statue doesn't move, of course, but the space around it seems to shift subtly, like the edges of a dream when you try to remember them. You blink. You're not alone anymore. A woman stands nearby, swaying gently to the hum. Her skin is sun-warmed terracotta, her hair woven with date palm fronds. She wears a crown of silver reeds. She might be a priestess. She might be a goddess. She might be your imagination. These things feel increasingly interchangeable. She places a small woven basket beside you. Inside, a scroll, a real one. Not clay, not baked. Papyrus or something like it. You reach for it, but she stops you with a raised hand. You read it only when you've forgotten everything else, she says. You nod, mostly to look like you understand. She offers no further explanation. Instead, she dips her hand into the spring and flicks a few droplets onto the platform. They land on the god's feet with a sound like bells underwater. Water carries memory, she says, but only if you don't ask it to. Another gem of divine logic. You rise slowly. She's already turned away, gliding toward the dark mouth of another corridor. The click of her reed sandals fades. The basket remains. You pick it up and tuck the scroll beneath your arm. It's surprisingly warm, like it's been nestled against a fire or a heartbeat. As you move to leave the chamber, your reflection catches in the shallow spring. You don't look quite like yourself. Your eyes seem darker, your shoulders straighter. And there's a small mark on your wrist, a smear of blue pigment, or the shadow of something older. You pause, then step over the channel and re-enter the corridor. The hum begins to change now. Still gentle, still lulling, but rhythmic, like footsteps, or the beat of a drum, or a heart remembering its place. You pass a narrow niche in the wall. Inside, a tall jar sealed with bitumen and rope. A label hangs from it, etched in careful cuneiform. You lean closer. It translates loosely to, for dreams not yet remembered. You're pretty sure that qualifies you. You continue down the corridor, now sloping upward again. A warm draft brushes your face. Air from higher places, scented faintly with incense and roasted grain. You follow it. As you ascend, a sudden sound startles you. A quiet thump, then a splash. You peer around a corner and find a young acolyte attempting to balance amphorae on their head. Judging by the wet floor and the smashed pottery, it's going great. They spot you and groan. Please, don't tell the cook. You mime a zipped mouth. They smile and hand you a date. It's sweet, sticky, and filled with grit. You chew it anyway. You heading to the grain loft? They ask. You shrug. I think so. They nod solemnly. Watch out for the owl. She hates sandals. And with that, the apprentice is gone, slipping down another passage with the grace of someone who's learned all the shortcuts of a place that's bigger than it has any right to be. You stand alone again, your footsteps echoing softly as you move toward what smells suspiciously like warm bread and ancient secrets. The hum continues. Now, it sounds like it's coming from the ovens. The corridor opens like a breath releasing. Stone gives way to wood plank floors, worn smooth and soft as river driftwood. You step into the grain loft, though loft is a generous term. It's more of a great, arched chamber filled wall to wall with sacks, baskets, and bins, all overflowing with the bounty of fields long since harvested. Barley, emmer wheat, lentils, dried chickpeas. It's a pantry big enough to feed an empire or a particularly ambitious pigeon army. You inhale, and it's like the inside of a bread oven. Warm, earthy, alive with the memory of sun-soaked soil. The scent is a lullaby. If comfort had a smell, this would be it. A row of terracotta ovens lines the far wall, glowing softly, embers pulsing like sleepy eyes. Two older women work in near silence, one kneading dough with strong forearms, the other tending flatbreads with a long wooden peel. They don't look up, but they nod when you pass. You're handed a small loaf before you can even ask. It's still hot. You tear it open. Steam curls out like incense, carrying hints of honey, coriander, and something vaguely mysterious, possibly dreams, possibly fenugreek. Eat before it cools, one of the bakers says, eyes twinkling, but focused on the bread in her oven. Gods don't bless cold loaves. You take a bite. It's soft and crunchy at once, just slightly underbaked in the middle. Perfect. A cat slinks past your ankles, tail high. She stares at you with the full weight of feline disapproval, then jumps effortlessly onto a high beam, where she proceeds to nap like she invented the concept. She probably did. Overhead, sacks of grain hang from rope pulleys, some sealed, some cracked open to reveal their contents. The ceiling itself is painted with constellations, each outlined in gold leaf that catches the firelight. You recognize the great bull, the scorpion, and what might be the celestial representation of oops, too much wine. In the center of the loft, a huge circular grinding stone turns slowly. A young man guides a donkey around it in lazy circles. He hums, not the same hum as before, but close. Human this time, tired but content. You nod to him as you pass. He winks and points upward. You look. There's a ladder carved into the far wall, one rung at a time, all the way up to a square hatch in the ceiling. No sign, no instructions, just the strong, unmistakable pull of curiosity. You climb. The hatch creaks open into a narrow walkway between the thick mud brick walls of the Ziggurat's upper tier. You're outside again, or close to it. A breeze swirls past, carrying dust and the smell of distant reeds. Lanterns hang at intervals, glowing like sleepy fireflies. You follow the path until it widens into a stone balcony tucked between spires. A low bench offers the only furniture. You sit. Your bread's almost gone. Your fingers are sticky. From here, the city unfolds in hushed glory. If it is bathed in moonlight and lamplight, its canals snaking like silver threads, its rooftops dappled with sleeping figures. Even the air seems slower here. You can see farmers' boats docked in rows, their hulls swaying gently in the tide. A late fisherman paddles through a side canal, his lantern casting ripples in gold. You spot two children chasing fireflies with reed baskets near the outer wall. It's a lullaby in motion. You close your eyes and lean back. A soft hoot sounds nearby. You look up and spot her, perched on a beam just above your head. The owl, silent, regal, possibly judging your sandals. Her eyes blink, massive and glowing. She ruffles her feathers once and turns her head, 3/4 of a turn, which honestly feels like showing off. She's the Ziggurat's keeper, says a voice to your left. You turn. A man sits cross-legged on the far end of the bench, scribbling into a narrow clay tablet with a stylus. I thought the priests were, you say. He grins. They work here. She lives here. You both sit in silence for a moment, listening to the wind whisper through the reed-lined eaves. He adds, she showed up after the second collapse. Just moved in. No one asked her to leave? Wise, you say. Wiser than most. She's older than all of us. Probably remembers when the gods still gave clearer instructions. You study her again. She preens a wing, fluffs her chest, and lets out one more soft hoot, as if confirming this. The scribe sets his tablet aside and stands. This place holds more than stories, he says. It holds the pauses between them. That's where the real weight is. And then, without any fanfare, he's gone, vanished into a shadowy stairwell behind a pillar you could have sworn wasn't there a second ago. You blink. Nope, still gone. The owl flaps her wings once and takes off, gliding silently into the night. You rise and follow the breeze again, descending a new staircase that seems to spiral gently downward, not harshly like a tower, but slowly, like a thought folding into itself. You pass carved reliefs along the walls now, scenes of harvest, marriage, rain ceremonies. You pause at one, a line of figures pouring water from tall jars onto a field where barley sprouts glow under a stylized sun. It's peaceful, almost cheerful. You touch the stone. It's warm. Some scholars argue whether such images were literal or symbolic. Did they depict real rituals? Or were they aspirational, reminders of divine harmony? The debate, like most debates, never ends. The hum returns. You realize now it's been changing with you, adapting, echoing. It's not one voice, it's layers. Bakers, scribes, priests, owls, laughter, rivers. Not separate sounds, but a harmony of Mesopotamia itself. You keep moving. A side door swings open. Behind it, a long hallway lined with giant clay jars, sealed with wax and stamped with the king's seal. You pass them slowly, each one a time capsule, each one holding something precious. Oil, grain, scrolls, maybe memories. You reach the end of the hallway and find another staircase. You hesitate, hand on the carved railing. You're not sure what floor you're on anymore. But it doesn't matter. Every step now feels less like travel and more like return. You take the first step down. The hum deepens. Down you go. The steps here are shallower, closer together, worn into the stone by thousands of feet over hundreds of years. You take them slowly, your fingers trailing the wall. It's smoother here, faintly cool, as if the stone remembers the press of many palms before yours. The hum changes again, now almost percussive, like fingers tapping gently on the lid of a water jar. Still soft, still soothing, but steady, intentional. At the bottom of the stairs, the air shifts. It's thicker, warmer, perfumed with something sharp and earthy. Resin, maybe. You're in a small, candle-lit chamber lined with niches. Each holds an object, carefully placed, reverently still. You step inside the hall of offerings. A low table runs through the center, surrounded by mats woven from river reeds. On it, offerings from all corners of the land. Tiny carved animals, obsidian blades, polished stones, shell necklaces, a bundle of dried figs wrapped in linen, and a small wooden comb with teeth like the rays of a stylized sun. Each item hums, faintly. Not audibly. More like the moment you remember a tune but can't name it. At the far end, a priest, older than the ziggurat seems possible, sits cross-legged, eyes closed. A tall blue-feathered fan stands motionless behind him. You hesitate, unsure whether to interrupt. He opens one eye lazily and motions you forward. "Take one," he says. You blink. "A gift?" He shakes his head, amused. "A memory. One that doesn't belong to you yet." You eye the comb, but your fingers drift to something else. A small copper mirror, its surface dulled with age, but still holding the shimmer of 1,000 faces. You pick it up. It's heavier than it looks. "Hold it to the flame," the priest says. You do. The candlelight dances across its surface, and suddenly, faintly, you see yourself. But not now. You're dressed differently. A linen tunic. Kohl-lined eyes. You're standing in a garden filled with pomegranates. You're laughing. The image fades as quickly as it came. The priest grins. That one's popular. You gently return the mirror to the table. "Everything here has a story," he says. "Some just haven't been told yet. You want to ask more?" But he closes his eyes again. Conversation's over. You move on, stepping into a corridor beyond the chamber. The floor here is mosaic, tiny tiles arranged in spirals and stars. You walk slowly, each step a whisper. The hum follows, now infused with light notes, like flutes played from far away. A stone bench runs along one wall. A young girl sits cross-legged, surrounded by small clay tablets. She glances up and waves a stylus in greeting. "Want to write something?" she asks. You pause. "What kind of something?" "Doesn't matter. The gods read between the lines. You kneel beside her. She hands you a wet slab of clay and a stylus with a worn tip. You hesitate, then start carving. The symbols don't come easily, but they arrive. Not words exactly, but images. A ziggurat, a cat, a broken sandal. You finish with a spiral. The girl nods approvingly. Very mysterious. They'll like that. You leave the tablet on a shelf, where dozens of others sit, drying. Not labeled, not organized, just waiting. As you stand, she tugs your sleeve. If you meet the riverman, tell him the fish still owe me. You nod solemnly, the only appropriate reaction to such a request. You continue down the hallway, now gently sloping again, this time upward toward a golden light that flickers at the end. You emerge into a chamber that feels impossibly tall. Pillars rise like tree trunks, painted with scenes from myths, both familiar and half-remembered. Ishtar riding a lion, Enki pouring water from twin vases, a serpent curled around a ladder of stars. At the center of the room is a pool. Still, black, perfectly round. The air here is thick with incense, frankincense, myrrh, and something else. Ancient and floral, like the ghost of a summer long gone. You kneel beside the water. Your reflection looks back. Older, maybe. Calmer, but also curious. Behind you, torches line the walls. Their flames don't flicker. They burn straight up, like they're listening. You reach toward the water. Just before you touch it, something stirs. A ripple. From the far side of the pool, a figure rises. Not entirely visible, just presence. You feel watched, not judged. Known, not explained. The figure does not speak. You don't need it to. Instead, you watch together. The pool shifts. Images bloom on its surface. Grain bending under wind. A mother weaving under a fig tree. A child dancing through a canal's edge. Hands offering dates at a market. Life. Ordinary. Sacred. Historians often debate whether Mesopotamian temples were houses for gods or theaters for ritual. Whether what happened inside was divine or just deeply human. But here, in this moment, you realize both answers are true. You and the figure sit in silence. Time slows. The hum fades now, replaced by a low vibration that feels more like a heartbeat, your own, or the city's, or the planet's. It doesn't matter. When you stand, the figure is gone. The water is still. You leave the chamber through an arch lined with hanging beads, this time shaped like stars and moons, glowing faintly as you brush past. Ahead, another passage. You follow it. And the hum? It's back, but now it's humming with your rhythm. The passage twists like a reed plaited into a basket, never straight, never quite predictable. The walls lean slightly, forming a gentle curve overhead. You could almost believe you're walking through the belly of some ancient creature, one that swallowed temples and dreams whole. You press onward, hands grazing the stone. It's warm now, pulsing faintly with energy. Or maybe that's just your heartbeat syncing with the hum again. The scent changes, damp earth and water lilies. A sign. You emerge into a wide open space, a courtyard, open to the sky. Above, the ziggurat looms, its stepped layers glowing under moonlight. A massive stairway to the heavens, or a giant's unfinished pyramid, depending on your bedtime mood. Stars scatter across the sky, and a thin crescent moon slices the dark like a priest's sickle harvesting silence. But it's the fountain that draws you. At the center of the courtyard, surrounded by stone benches and soft tufts of papyrus, a large fountain bubbles gently. Water spills from a carved lion's mouth into a wide, shallow basin. The surface reflects the night sky perfectly, until you dip your fingers in and the constellations ripple. You sit on the fountain's edge, letting your feet dangle just above the water. A frog chirps from somewhere, unseen. Another answers. The hum becomes amphibian for a moment, throaty, playful, utterly unbothered by your awe. To your left, someone is painting on the wall, using a brush made of date palm fiber and pigments ground from crushed stones. The mural depicts a procession: musicians, dancers, priests, oxen garlanded with flowers. You watch as the artist adds a tiny owl near the top. She doesn't notice you. Good placement, you murmur. Thank you, she replies without turning. She likes the north corner. The painter wipes sweat from her brow and switches colors, dipping her brush into a bowl of ground lapis lazuli. It glitters even in the dim torchlight. You realize her palette is a mix of both natural and sacred. Real stones, yes, but also ash from burned offerings, bits of dried myrtle, even honey to bind the color. You're watching history literally being painted. I like to include things that aren't real, she says after a moment. Keeps the gods entertained. Do they get bored? She shrugs. Wouldn't you? You can't argue with that. She adds a final flourish, a snake curled into a spiral, hiding behind a lyre. You move on, passing under a vine-covered arch into a smaller alcove. The air changes again, cooler, stiller. The walls here are lined with baskets, each labeled in soft cuneiform. Inside them, offerings from the river. A dried fish, strung with beads. A bundle of reeds, woven into a net. A clay pot, half filled with silt. A turtle shell, polished to a shine. The river is more than a body of water here. It's a god, a provider, a transporter of secrets. Everyone gives something back. A tablet on a pedestal reads, "For what is taken, offer gratitude. For what is given, offer song." You hum a few notes. No melody in particular. Just sound. The tablet hums back. No one will ever prove whether the rivers in Mesopotamia were worshipped as distinct entities or simply revered for their power. But standing here, with your echo drifting into warm stone, you understand why the line between belief and survival was never all that clear. A low hallway beckons beyond the basket alcove. The walls slope inward, narrowing until you feel as though you might have to crouch. But just when you're about to stoop, it opens again, revealing a chamber of quiet spectacle, the star vault. A domed ceiling above is painted black, flecked with silver dots and gold spirals. Lines connect constellations, some familiar, others speculative at best. Beneath it, a stone platform shaped like a boat sits in the center of the room. Ropes hang from the ceiling, with polished bronze discs that catch and throw light in shimmering waves. You lie down on the platform, spine to stone, and look up. The stars shift, slowly, almost imperceptibly. The boat beneath you rocks, not physically, but something inside you sways in rhythm with the illusion. You hear distant water, maybe real, maybe memory. This was where priests mapped the sky, or maybe where they dreamed of mapping it. Scholars still argue whether Mesopotamian star charts were primarily agricultural tools or divine instruction manuals. But laying here, watching the sky dance slowly above you, it feels like the beginning of bedtime stories across centuries. Next to you, someone lies down silently. You glance over. Just a boy, maybe 10, eyes wide. Do they ever fall? He whispers, pointing to the stars. You think? Not really. They just pretend sometimes to make us pay attention. He nods solemnly. Then, do you think they're watching us? You pause. Only when we're not pretending, they're not. He grins at that, then pulls a tiny clay lion from his pouch and places it beside your hand. For the boat, he says, so you don't go alone. And then he's gone. Just gone. You lie back again. The boat rocks. The stars pulse. You breathe. And the hum? The hum is now breath. Yours. The ziggurats. The cities. All joined together in a slow, endless sigh. The boat room lingers behind you like a half-finished dream as you step through a hanging curtain of woven reeds. They rustle softly, whispering as you pass. Nothing distinct, just that swishy hush of old secrets not quite ready to be told. You're in a hallway again, but this one is dimmer, more earthen. The stone under your feet has been worn smooth, and faint etchings line the lower walls, spirals, waves, birds mid-flight. These are not meant to be seen at a distance. They're for close inspection, for fingertips to read in the dark. Ahead, you hear low chanting. Not organized, more like murmurs, layers of voices with no clear rhythm. You follow the sound. It leads you into the chamber of scribes. Lamps hang from iron hooks in the ceiling, casting a warm, flickering glow. Every surface is covered in clay tablets, stacked in neat columns, arranged on shelves, tucked into corners. Some are still soft, their edges crumbling slightly. Others have been fired, dark and solid. People move slowly between the shelves, some young, some older, all hunched over their work, styluses scratching rhythmically. One woman pauses, blows gently on her tablet, and presses it into a cloth-lined basket. You're handed a stylus before you can object. "Don't think," says the man next to you. "Just write what you remember." "I don't know if I—" "Exactly. That's why it works." You sit. A fresh slab of clay sits before you, soft and waiting. You press the stylus into it. Not to write a story, but a symbol, a river, a footstep, a sun. You realize you're not recording events, but leaving traces. It's less writing and more remembering forward. That's what this chamber is for. Not just keeping records, but anchoring time. One of the scribes passes behind you, chuckling as he skims a tablet. Someone wrote a poem about barley beer and goat burps again. "That's the third one this month," another calls from across the room. Apparently, even scribes need comedy. You trace one final mark, a small fish with a dot for an eye. You don't know what it means, but the tablet feels complete. You add it to a stack and stand. Before you leave, you pass a display of tablets arranged in a circle. One bears a message you can actually read. "We write to outlive ourselves." You pause for a breath that stretches longer than it should. Then, onward. The next space is quieter, not silent. There's always some kind of sound here, but gentler. It's an archive of fabrics, oddly enough. Drapes hang like long-forgotten banners, dyed with deep earth tones, burnt umber, saffron, river green. They sway slightly, though there's no wind. In the center sits a loom. A woman is working it with impossible grace, her feet tapping gently beneath the frame, hands fluttering like reed fronds in a canal breeze. The fabric she's weaving glows faintly, threads of silver and black, braided through with something almost golden. You stare at it too long. "Careful," she says, without looking up. "Stories get trapped in warp and weft." "Is that bad?" She finally turns to face you, smiling. "Only if you weren't supposed to be in the story yet." You back away slowly, which she finds hilarious. The next chamber, really more of a balcony, is open to the night. You step out and immediately feel the cool wind, taste the faint salt of distant sea air. Below, the city sprawls, or maybe Uruk, Or maybe some shimmering dream of both. Flames flicker in courtyards, smoke curls from rooftop ovens, laughter drifts upward, the child's song meanders across the tiles. This isn't the ziggurat's view of the city. This is the city's view of itself. You sit on a bench, the stones still warm from the day's sun. A small cat winds around your ankles, purring like a miniature thunderstorm. You scratch behind its ears. Do you live here? You ask it. It blinks slowly. Typical. You tilt your head back, watching a shooting star streak across the sky. Just one. Scholars still argue whether ancient astronomers were more concerned with omens or calendars. But if you ask the cat, probably omens. Calendars don't catch mice. You stay there for a while, just breathing, feeling the pulse of the city through stone and scent and starlight. Eventually, you rise. The cat doesn't follow. It has better things to do. You return inside, through another curtain, this one made entirely of knotted string. The knots jingle softly as they tap one another, like tiny bells that forgot how to ring. The chamber beyond is small, round, one last space, carved deep into the ziggurat's heart. A single pedestal stands in the middle. Upon it, a vessel, plain, unfired, still damp with the moisture of the world. You walk around it slowly. There are no guards, no signs, just this, an unfinished jar. You reach toward it, then hesitate. Behind you, someone speaks. Every night, someone shapes it a little more. You turn. It's the first priest you met, now seated in the corner. Does it ever get finished? He smiles faintly. Not if we're lucky. You run a finger around the vessel's edge. It's smooth, but not complete. You look up. He's already gone again. Just you, the jar, and the sound of your own breathing joining the endless hum. You leave the chamber slowly, one last glance at the unfinished vessel tugging at something in your chest. You're not quite sure what you've participated in, or if you were a participant at all. Maybe just a dreamer, brushing fingertips against someone else's myth. The corridor ahead tilts downward in a slow, spiraling slope. It winds like a river eddy, and you follow it without question. The air cools with each step, the walls widening gradually, as though the ziggurat is exhaling. Eventually, the passage opens into what looks like a garden. Yes, a garden, inside the ziggurat. Overhead, the ceiling is painted to resemble the sky, deep blue, spangled with starbursts and clouds, rendered in chalky swirls. A clever shaft must lead to the outside, because a moonbeam stretches across the floor, casting light onto the central pool. The pool is perfectly still, lined with polished obsidian. It reflects you back, though the version in the water seems calmer, wiser, maybe a little more Mesopotamian. You dip your hand into the surface, and it's surprisingly warm, as if the water remembers sunlight. A small voice behind you says, "If you tell it a truth, it keeps it." You glance over your shoulder. A boy. Not the same one from the starboat. This one is older, maybe 15. His hands are stained with pigment, and he holds a flute carved from bone. What kind of truth? He shrugs. Any kind, even if it's just yours. You look back at the pool. The hum returns. Quieter now. More like a distant lullaby. The kind someone might play to coax barley into sprouting. You lean close and whisper something only the water hears. It ripples once, then stills. You can go now, the boy says kindly. Or stay longer. Some people stay forever. They just change shape. You laugh, not sure if it's entirely a joke. Like into frogs? He doesn't smile. Sometimes frogs, sometimes date trees, or bricks, or that cat. Oh, So she was watching after all. You rise and move through the garden. Each plant is labeled in clay script. Some names you recognize: myrrh, coriander, garlic. Others are more enigmatic: sleepgrass, dream mallow, whisper vine. One corner is filled with shallow bowls of milk and tiny honey cakes, offerings, probably not for humans. And then a curtain of golden threads marks the last threshold. You pause, take a breath, step through. The chamber is vast. The ceiling disappears into shadow, and the walls gleam with embedded shells, beads, and colored stones. It feels like standing inside a giant treasure box. Except the treasure is silence, shaped and polished over centuries. In the middle of the room, the top of the ziggurat. You've finally arrived, but you're not above the city. The dream has curved inward. This ziggurat summit is hidden, secret, internal, a mirror of the outer one. Here, the hum is pure. It's not just sound anymore. It's sensation, memory, a chorus of baked brick, ancient chants, hands in wet clay, laughter echoing in temple corridors, frogs croaking in irrigation ditches, a priest whispering to a moonbeam. You close your eyes. You feel every level you've climbed through. You remember the priest's cracked incense bowl, the barley circle by the canal, the owl painted on a mural's edge, the playful glyph for burp hidden on a clay tablet, the unfinished jar. You remember it all, even the things you never lived. The room darkens. You lie down in the center of the floor. No bed, just polished stone and the soft weight of history pressing down like a velvet blanket. The stars reappear, projected on the ceiling now, or maybe just returning where they always were. And the ziggurat hums its lullaby, not for worship, not for power, just for you, just so you'll remember, just so you'll sleep. The night stretches long now, softer than woven flax, quieter than the slow drip of temple water clocks. Around you, the ziggurat folds back into silence, not empty, but full of the day's echoes settling like dust on old stone. You don't move. You don't need to. Above you, the stars spin their silent arc, tracing shapes that were once lions, reeds, gods, and fish. They don't shine so much as shimmer, like distant embers drifting across a cool sky. The kind of stars that never hurry. The hum is distant now, fainter, more like your own breath than sound. The temple, the chambers, the painted owls and scribes, the river reeds and barley fields, they're all still there, just quieter, waiting behind your eyelids. Even the cat has curled somewhere out of sight, tail flicking in her dreams, ears twitching to ancient songs. The air is warmer here, safe, familiar. You've traveled far without ever needing to go anywhere. You're part of the ziggurat now, or it's part of you. Either way, there's no rush to figure it out. Let your mind wander back to that glowing pool, to the boy with the bone flute, to the scribe chuckling at a beer poem. Let it all fade like sun on baked brick. There's nothing left to do, just sleep. Sleep well. Sleep long. Sleep deep. The ziggurat will keep watch. End of script. Sweet dreams.